Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barney Frank, along with Maria Cardona. I am a co-chair of this afternoon's virtual Rules Committee meeting. We are adapting as sensibly and effectively as we can to this problem we are dealing with. I think we as Democrats can take pride in once again setting the pattern. It took our Republican colleagues several tries to figure out that they should be doing it the way we did, and they wasted a lot of time and money. But we have, and I give credit to the staff of the Democratic National Committee, Tom Perez and others, for working out as well as could be done an approximation of a convention that would take place in person. And this is as close to the basic small d democratic processes that it's possible to get given these technical limitations. I should add that when it comes to technical limitations, I yield to no one. And therefore, if I screw up, you'll have to accept the fact that that's who I am. I have my assistant Courtney Flynn at literally my right hand, trying to make sure that I minimize those. But we are going to go ahead, as I said, consistent with democratic procedures, modified by the need to adapt to the limitations that have been imposed on us. And I look forward to our having a very important virtual meeting that will be a virtuous one at the same time.
Thank you, Congressman Frank. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, I guess. This is Maria Cardona, and I will mirror the Congressman's remarks in terms of bearing with us with the technical new realities that we are living today. And Congressman, I think I can beat you on the issue of not being technically efficient in this. So if I screw up, I also ask for everyone's patience and forgiveness ahead of time. Before I go into my opening remarks, I'd like to lead the group in the Pledge of Allegiance. So please unmute your microphone for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We can please remute your microphone. So again, good afternoon. Thank you, fellow Rules and Bylaws Committee members, for joining us today. My name is Maria Cardona, and it's truly an honor to be with you today as we take up this important work of the Rules Committee, again, in this new reality that we are all living and facing. We're pleased to introduce to you the Rules Committee Vice Chairs. These individuals are leaders in their own right, and we really appreciate each one of them serving in this leadership role and in this capacity. State Representative Christopher England represents the 70th District in the Alabama House of Representatives and is the chair of the Alabama Democratic Party. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, who, as I understand, is still currently at the services of the legendary, our legendary civil rights leader, John Lewis. She leads, as everyone knows, the city of Atlanta, the cradle of the civil rights movement. And prior to her election as mayor, Ms. Bottoms served on the Atlanta City Council. Ms. Bottoms recently chaired the 2020 Platform Drafting Committee, and she has also been front and center during the news during this COVID-19 crisis, as she herself has contracted COVID-19 along with her family. So we wish her the very best, and we thank her for her service. Christopher Liu served as Deputy Secretary of Labor during the Obama-Biden administration. And prior to his appointment to this position, Mr. Liu was Assistant to the President and White House Cabinet Secretary. Mr. Liu is currently a member of the Democratic National Committee's Rules and Bylaws Committee. Alexandra Gallardo Roker is a Vice Chair of the California Democratic Party. Ms. Roker is also an active member of the Communications Workers of America, where she served in a number of positions ranging from shop steward to vice president. Ms. Roker is a member of the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee as well. I would also like to introduce to you the DNC staff who worked so hard and to help to ensure that we're all able to do this important work. Patrice Taylor, Rick Boylan, Alicia Dyer, and Elizabeth Maria Penn all work in the DNC's Office of Party Affairs, and I would like to propose we all give them a round of applause. Yay. I know we can't hear you guys, but yay. Miles Fernandez runs the office of the DNC secretary and leads the team that certifies all convention participants, including the members of this committee. Graham Wilson and Andrea Levine also serve as DNC counsel. We thank them. Abby Watson, Matt Thielen, and the DNCC tech team are working around the clock to help facilitate our virtual meetings. Now, I would like to call on my dear friend, our fearless leader in the DNC chair, Tom Perez. Tom is a dedicated public servant and has spent his career fighting for civil and voting rights. When Tom became chair of the DNC, he took on the important job of rebuilding the party and making sure Democrats were playing in all states and electing Democrats at all levels. And he, along with his fearless team, have been incredibly successful at doing just that. He and the DNC team have done exactly what we were hoping for them to do, and they have laid the groundwork for a success in November for us and Joe Biden to take back the White House. We see a DNC that is thriving and doing the hard work to make sure that we are successful this November. Please joining me in welcoming my friend and DNC chair, Tom Perez.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are right now. Thank you for those kind introductory remarks, Maria, Madam Chair, I should say. Congressman Frank, thank you for your leadership over many, many years. It was such an honor working with Senator Kennedy to get to partner with you and your team during your illustrious tenure in Congress. Thanks to all the vice chairs for stepping up in a big way and all the staff that was recognized by Maria. I also want to say a special shout out to a guy named Andrew Binns, who's been working double duty on the tech related to this, as well as technology relating to the convention. Andrew and his team have been doing a great job. Our help desk has been working overtime to make this work, because these are indeed extraordinary times. And I want to also thank our leadership team at the DNC, Mary Beth Cahill, Sam Cornell, others, Patrice Taylor, doing great work. You know, I was just watching the funeral service for John Lewis, and he was an inspirational figure for me. I remember working with Senator Kennedy in the mid-90s, and I had the privilege of writing the first draft of what ultimately became the Byrd-Shepard Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And I remember sitting with Senator Kennedy in late 1995, and we were wondering, so who should be the lead co-sponsor in the House? And that was an easy question to answer for Senator Kennedy. Of course, it was John Lewis. And so here I was, a little 30-something staffer, and we walked over to John Lewis's office in the House. And as Congressman Frank will testify, most senators made House members walk to them. But Senator Kennedy understood that John Lewis was a titan, a man of short stature, but a giant in terms of his legacy. And I remember vividly sitting in that room wondering, I couldn't believe that I was getting paid that day. And I bring this up because it's a reminder of what we're all about here. We're all working on some really important rules. And as President Obama said about 25 minutes ago, you know, this country is a constant work in progress. We take the unfinished business of the past and we try to improve it, and we work together on it. And I want to say a thank you to everybody who's been involved, because when I think about the work that we have done together over the last 4 years, all the people on this committee, so many others, we know that our unity is our greatest strength as a party, and we know it's Donald Trump's worst nightmare. We had an unprecedented field of candidates in terms of numbers, and I would argue in terms of quality as well. And every single one of them said, I'm in it to win it, and if I don't win it, I am going to be full-throated behind our nominee. That's exactly what happened. We see this day in and day out. We've had a number of debates throughout the presidential primary campaign, and we've had a number of discussions, and I'm so grateful for the Biden team because Joe Biden set the tone at the top. I want everyone involved, he said. He has great respect for everybody who ran for president, and he built a really great process. I want to say thank you to those who supported Senator Sanders and other candidates in this campaign, because everybody should be proud. And we have worked hard. Team Biden has worked hard. We have representatives from 17 campaigns on the coordinated committee, because Joe Biden understood that, you know what, everybody adds value. And I want to make sure you are on this team, because we are one team. We are Team Democrat, Team Biden, and you have all done so much. And we've always understood throughout this process, and we had some work to do, starting, back in the day with the Unity Reform Commission, and so many people on this call today participated in that. And we had robust discussion, and we had a unity of values. We wanted to make sure the Democratic Party worked for everyone. We wanted to make sure we returned power to the grassroots. We wanted to make sure that people were proud to be a Democrat. We wanted to make sure we figured out ways to articulate our values. We wanted to make sure we were open and transparent. We understood throughout this process that we understand the difference between unity and unanimity. We're not asking everyone to agree with everything that one person says. But what got us so far, and what continues to sustain us to this moment, is our understanding that our differences pale in comparison to the values that we share as a Democratic Party. And so I want to thank all of you, regardless of which candidate you were supporting. We were all together. And one of the things I'm so proud of is when we came together around a series of reforms, there was such a remarkable consensus. And so we'll continue to work. We will not conflate unity and unanimity. We will have discussion. We will never conflate debate and division. We can have vigorous debate, but understand that we are together. Donald Trump, in these remaining 96 days, and let me remind us all, we got 96 days till the weekend, 96 days till the most important election of our lifetime. And frankly, it's less than 96 days because, for instance, in Arizona, voting begins on September the 14th. In so many critical states, voting begins well before November 3rd. So we have our work to do. And when we come together every 4 years in this way, it's an opportunity to highlight and showcase our shared values. And that's exactly what we're doing. This is an extraordinary year, an extraordinary time. My father, who was an immigrant from the Dominican Republic and spoke what I used to call Ricky Ricardo English, he always used to say to me, "Tom, you must always count on the unexpected." I've thought about that line a lot during the course of the last year or so, as we've confronted so many extraordinary challenges in our journey here. I'm sorry that we won't be able to have the convention that we discussed a couple years ago, even last year. But you know what? As Congressman Frank said, we've once again throughout this process demonstrated that when you follow science, it is the right thing to do. It is the smart thing to do. And so even though we won't be able to come together in person, we're proud to be hosting a convention across America, which will be anchored unequivocally in the great city of Milwaukee. And the Vice President looks forward to accepting the nomination in Milwaukee, a city of resilience, a city of great diversity. And we will be there, and we look forward to celebrating when we get there. And as members of the 2020 committee, you embody that strength, diversity, character, and courage of our convention delegates and Democrats across the nation. We are going to have a different year in Milwaukee, but you know what? It's going to be equally exciting and inspirational as we highlight our values. Good leadership, as Joe Biden has demonstrated, means being able to adapt to any situation, and it's exactly what we have done. In the middle of this pandemic, we put the health and safety of the American people first. And make no mistake about it, we've discussed it often. This is indeed the most important election of our lifetime, because this president is indeed the most dangerous president of our lifetime. Just saw more economic data today. The GDP contraction is the largest in history, folks. the largest in recorded history. That is frightening. And we see more unemployment numbers, 19 weeks in a row, over 1 million. You know, in the Great Recession, it happened 0 weeks in a row. This is an epic collapse. And Donald Trump has broken one promise after another. His incompetence has allowed this pandemic to spiral out of control. We hit a terrible milestone, 150,000 deaths from coronavirus. And what is his response? To distract us, to say maybe we'll postpone the election. Let us be clear. The election will take place on November 3rd, period. No footnotes. We know that. Don't let distracting Donald distract us from the work ahead. We have a spectacular candidate in Joe Biden who has spent his entire career standing up for ordinary Americans, for people in need. We need leadership with empathy and compassion, leadership that can unite, leadership with a demonstrated track record of accomplishment. And that's exactly what Joe Biden has done. Fighting for that union worker who's seeking a better wage and the right to organize, fighting for that student marching to end gun violence, or the women speaking out to prevent domestic abuse, fighting for those peaceful protesters, speaking out like John Lewis for a more perfect union, fighting for the LGBTQ activists, pushing for the full equality they deserve, for the dreamer building a better life in America. For all of these remarkable people across this country, that's what Joe Biden's life has been about. And this election, as Joe Biden would be the first to admit, is more than about Joe Biden or Donald Trump. It's really about two competing visions for America. We all know when Trump launched his campaign 5 years ago, it began a dark era for our country. I look yesterday and I see him trying to divide America once again. We should stop referring to dog whistle politics from Donald Trump, because dog whistles are subtle. There's nothing subtle about his appeals to the basest instincts of our nation. We can do so much better. And that's exactly the difference in vision. Joe Biden is talking about an era of bold, inclusive American leadership, where our strength is not only defined by force, is not defined by force or fear mongering, but by the compassion and dignity we show each other. These are the values of Joe Biden. These are the values of the Democratic Party. And these are the values that I'm confident will win out today and will win out in 96 days. We have so many challenges, but I am confident that the unity that we will exude today and have exuded throughout this process will be a unity that will win out in November. Again, I want to say thank you to every single one of you. The work you have done has been extraordinary. I think about where we were and where we are, and I cannot say anything but thank you to everyone. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your ingenuity. Thank you for your persistence. And folks, we've got more work to do. And when we work together, we're at our best. So with that, I want to say thanks, and I will turn it back to our co-chairs. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, amigos. Buenas tardes, everyone. Thank you so much, Senor Chairman, for your leadership and for those inspirational remarks. We will do just that, sir. It has been a privilege to serve as this committee's co-chair during such an important moment in our nation's history. The chairman was right. America's in crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic has ravaged and devastated families, communities, small businesses, and our entire economy. But it didn't have to be this bad. We all know that if Donald Trump had any competent leadership, cared about what happens to the country as opposed to just himself, we wouldn't be in this situation. But his incompetence has cost tens of thousands of lives that could have been saved, and it plunged our economy into recession. This moment calls on us to come together, every one of us, as a party, to defeat this president and repair the soul of our nation. The polls right now show Joe Biden comfortably ahead by double digits. I would say, let's not believe those polls. Not because they're not necessarily true, I hope they are, but the only way that we're going to win is if we believe we are behind and that we do everything we can in our power to mobilize every single Democrat and independent and Republican and patriot that wants to put our country on the right road to recovery. It calls on us this moment to take bold action to end this pandemic, to put Americans back to work safely, to make our children go back to school safely, and to re-energize our economy. It calls on a new era of compassion for all of our fellow Americans. This is such a trying time for so many, and we can't let this president's fear-mongering divide us. That's exactly what he wants. As Democrats, we have to unite around our shared values by putting Joe Biden in the Oval Office and electing Democrats up and down the ticket all across this country. I'm so proud that our convention is putting the health, well-being, and safety of the American people first. We're engaging voters in new ways and ensuring science and truth lead us forward. All of us are going to remember this moment in our history. It's going to be challenging. We're going to look back on it and say, how did we do this? But we are going to do this. We're going to be doing this by uniting. Let's run this sad excuse for a president out of the Casa Blanca once and for all. Thank you.
I could not agree more with Maria, and in particular when she stresses the importance of getting everybody to vote. I want to join in talking about John Lewis. I had the privilege of meeting John in 1964 in Mississippi during the effort there to end the oppression, the South Africa-like oppression that was being imposed on the population there. And I served with him in the House. And I want to call out two groups of people who have been paying lip service to John and then in their behavior violating the principles that he so passionately and eloquently embodied. One is obvious, people on the right. I will give Trump credit for at least realizing that for him to say anything really substantive about John would have been carrying hypocrisy beyond even the limits that he's done. If there was ever fake news, it would have been him pretending that he had any respect for John's life and what he did in that life. But there are others on the Republican side who spoke about how wonderful John was. And what have they done? They've tried to dismantle the Voting Rights Act more successfully than they should have. They have cut back on efforts to help the poorest. Right now, we have the spectacle of the Republicans in the Senate unable to agree among themselves. It is a case that somebody said, I don't get credit for this. When you look at the bumbling and fumbling going on in the Republican caucus in the Senate, the problem is that the right hand doesn't know what the further right hand is doing. There is an objection to how much they should cut. They cannot agree on how much they should cut the benefits. And this election will more clearly present the choices that John Lewis asked America to make than any we've ever had, certainly since the Civil War. Beyond that, though, I do want to address another group that pays tribute to John Lewis, but does not apparently understand his message. Those are the people who think they're too pure to vote. Those are the people who say that they don't have a perfect candidate here. By the way, I understand what a good feeling it is to vote for a perfect candidate, because once in my life, I got to vote for a perfect candidate. By the time I ran for re-election, I had a couple of issues with my record, but I voted for me anyway. And I think in this case, the differences are so enormous that we just cannot accept as in any way rational the argument that people can't vote in this election because Joe Biden doesn't conform to everything they care about. And again, I've read people saying, well, we don't want to get involved in that messy process. We don't want to compromise. John Lewis, his life completely demolishes the notion that you cannot be idealistic and pragmatic at the same time. John was more completely devoted to the humane principles that we should be standing for than anybody I've ever met. He put himself in physical danger, not just once, not just on one bridge, but he lived that way for years, voluntarily forswearing the protection of the law because he was challenging the fundamentals of people who were so savage in their distaste for those principles. And at the same time, he was deeply engaged in democratic politics, both small d and big D. And I want to say to people who say they cannot participate, they can't vote because they can't make those compromises. They cannot sacrifice their purity. It's I borrow this from TV. The question isn't, are you smarter than a fifth grader? It is, are you morally purer than John Lewis? What is it about your life that entitles you, in effect, to repudiate him and to say that the life he devoted to politics was wasted? So I'm very pleased that we are going to be going forward, unified, not on every single issue, but on the general principle that this country is dedicated to fairness and equity, to a clean environment, to treating every individual justly and fairly. And I am confident that based on that, I guess I will close by saying Donald Trump did do one thing that he didn't intend to do. That is, he reminded the American people of the fundamental commitments that we have as a nation. His arrogant, hateful behavior has produced, he's awakened the best in this country. And I am confident that we're going to see that in November and that we're going to see a Democratic victory. I will close with this. Over my shoulder, I have a reminder of what kind of states we have. Once in the last 30 years or so, we have had a Democratic president, House, and Senate. The product of that was repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It was Obamacare, and it was something of which I'm very proud. What you see over my shoulder is a picture of me and a former DNC chair, Chris Dodd, signing the financial reform bill, which has done so much to help this nation. We can do great things again, and I am confident that we are here participating in the process that's going to lead to that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Congressman Frank, for those inspirational remarks. As you all know, the Rules Committee typically holds in-person meetings, but given the COVID-19 pandemic and the goal that we want to ensure the safety of convention participants, all of the standing committee meetings are being held virtually. One of the first things we will do is establish that we have a quorum of the committee members present for our meeting. In order to vote, members need to have two browsers open. One's going to be for Zoom, and it will be for and another one will be for the demcommittees.org portal that you all have been walked through that process. You can do that by having two windows open in your browser or having one of the windows open on two devices, such as Zoom on your computer and the portal on your tablet or smartphone. Please keep both browser windows open during the meeting. The votes will be displayed in the middle of the page in the portal. Members will use Zoom for our meeting, but not for voting. So when a vote is called, you're going to need to go to the portal window to vote yes, no, or abstain. This all will happen in the portal window. Once you cast your vote via the portal, you will get a message that your vote has been registered. Please allow for your browser window to refresh after your vote has been cast. Because we don't allow secret ballots, vote results will be announced and a tally sheet with how each member voted will be posted on the portal. We will now register attendance for the purpose of establishing a quorum. We need each committee member to please open the Rules Committee portal on your browser and vote yes in the voting box. Rules members will use this vote to register their presence. A quorum is constituted by a majority of the total votes present, members representing 91.75% votes. Staff, will you confirm for us that we have a quorum? I have been informed that we have a quorum. With that, I now ask the DNC's parliamentarian, Helen McFadden, to review the committee's rules of procedure that will govern today's meeting. You received a copy of these rules via email, and they're also available on the Rules Committee portal. I would like to note that the proposed rules you received a short time ago and are available on the portal were updated to reflect suggested changes provided by Rules member Janie Lear-Stein to ensure our meeting is conducted in a way that lives up to the highest goals for accessibility and inclusion. These updated rules have been agreed upon by the Biden and Sanders campaigns. Helen, could you please give us an overview?
Thank you, co-chairs. I would call the committee's attention to these rules. They are similar, but not identical to the rules that have been used for the last 20 to 30 years. They have been tweaked significantly in order to take into account that we are meeting virtually. The quorum rule is the same as it has always been. The powers of the officers are the same. Their duties and powers are the same as what they have always been. Where you start to see the changes for our virtual meetings are when you get to item 6, entitled Meetings. You will note that the meeting for today is called there by virtual application for July 30. And I call your attention to subpart C, where we have, because the DNC rules require us to be in a public meeting, we are in a public meeting. I caution you that you may be home alone with your computer, but the public and any other interested Democrat is participating and watching. They can see and hear. The proposals with regard to amendments and rules under these rules you are going to adopt were required to be turned in not later than 5 p.m. this past Monday. Then the duties with regard to the Rules Committee, item 7 in these rules, these have been tweaked to meet our virtual needs. Whatever this committee adopts this afternoon with regard to convention rules and permanent rules for the convention will be the rules as of today and will be confirmed and are subject only to a minority report amendment. Item 8, how we will vote, is considerably different. This will require that every vote taken be a roll call vote. And the voting will be opened when the debate on the matter begins. That is unusual and different, but it gives everyone an opportunity to consider how they are going to vote and get their vote in. The chairs will remind us when we are about to close the polls, and we'll give you at least a 15-second warning. A member's vote can be changed until the voting is closed. Item 9, with regard to motions, is again significantly tweaked because motions are only going to be accepted as pre-designated so that the debate can proceed efficiently and effectively through this virtual meeting. Amendments had to be pre-filed, and so it is known who wishes to speak. Then item 13 is the limitations you will be adopting on debate. There will be 2 full hours for consideration and debate, during which time the proponents and the opponents will have 8 minutes. If we are not through in that 2 hours, the time limitations will change, and they will be reduced to 60 seconds for and against. Then the last item here to which I wish to call your attention is the minority report rule. The number of seconds on the minority report is the same as it has always been. And should there be a minority report, it must be filed within 2 hours. And then finally, in order for minority reports to be filed, the signatures are going to be determined and confirmed by the Secretary's office. With regard to withdrawal, that would also be going through the Secretary's office. Those are the significant changes, and as our chair indicated today, you got another listing, another proposal of the rules. We'll see bolded the additions. All of those additions are made to make the procedures more handicapped accessible. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Helen. I'd like to announce that we had, for official purposes, a quorum of 143 to initiate this meeting of the Rules and Bylaws Committee for the Democratic Convention. I will now call a vote to adopt the rules of procedure. So now, please vote in the Rules Committee portal voting box. As a reminder, votes will be displayed in the middle of the page in the portal. There's going to be no voting on Zoom. When a vote is loaded, you should vote yes, no, or abstain. Once you cast your vote, you will get a message that your vote has been registered. The vote is about to close, so make sure that you are voting if you haven't yet. 15 seconds. We have a final vote. We're closing the vote. We have a final vote of 155 yes, 0 no, and 0 abstain. The rules of procedure have been adopted.
The next order of business is to ratify the proposed slate of convention officers. And I recognize Alexandra Gallardo-Ruca to present that. I think you're muted, or I'm going deaf.
No, you're perfect. Thank you so
Well,
much.
Met the met.
It is with great honor that I recommend the amazing slate of officers for the convention. This group of Democrats reflect the diversity of our party and are committed to make sure that we are organizing at every level to elect Democrats all over the country. Their leadership has led our party to embrace our values of equality, justice, and opportunity for all. The honorary chairs are Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Permanent Convention Chair Congressman Bernie Thompson, Permanent Co-Chairs Governor Phil Murray, Senator Tammy Duckworth, Senator Tom Carper, Mayor Tom Barrett, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and Congressman Tony Cardenas. Our Secretary, Jason Ray. Vice Chairs, Senator Bob Casey, Congresswoman Sharice Davids, Congresswoman Donna Shalala, former Congresswoman Carol Shea Porter, Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, Lieutenant Governor Kate Marshall, Lieutenant Governor Garland Gilchrist, Lieutenant Governor, former Congressman Tony Coelho, parliamentarians, Congressman Steny Hoyer, Helen McFadden, Sarah Merkel, State Senator Ivana Cancela. Our Sergeant of Arms will be Congresswoman Gwen Moore. Please join me and support this slate of officers for the 2020 Democratic National Convention.
Okay, we will now vote on the ratification of that slate.
It's Courtney will tell you when Barney should give 15-second warning and what the final numbers are reported. So the numbers are going to show up here. You can. That's me.
I can't see that.
You need to switch.
All I gotta do is announce the vote. What do you? I've called the vote. They'll give me the 15-second thing and then I'll announce the vote.
I'm asking if you still want this open. The scope.
I want to keep reading it, yeah.
15 seconds.
All right, this is the 15-second warning. Too much. What's the question?
I'm letting you read what.
I don't need to read that. I don't want to. Let me just. Okay, the vote is now closed. We have 158 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstention. So the ratification is completed. I guess we're not ready for the agenda.
Okay, I think also we want to, under our rules, the chair, like we've been doing, is going to give a 15-second warning before voting closes. However, we've decided to extend that to a 30-second warning, given all of this new technology for everybody, to be certain that you have enough time to go to the committee's portal, cast your vote, and make sure that everything is fine. So moving forward, we're going to give a 30-second warning before voting closes. So thank you, Congressman. Now we're going to go to the consideration of the convention agenda. Our next item of business will be to ratify the convention agenda that was also distributed yesterday and is in the portal. I'm not going to go through each and every single thing. I'm going to give an overview of what the convention agenda is. The convention festivities are going to kick off on Monday with opening ceremonies and a selection of speakers who will be announced at a later date. The results of votes on reports from each of the 3 standing committees to the convention, rules, platform, and credentials, will also be announced on Monday, including the vote on the party's platform. On Tuesday, after nominating speeches, we will officially nominate Joe Biden as our party's presidential nominee. Woohoo! The keynote address will also happen on Tuesday. The vice presidential candidate will be nominated on Wednesday, and the presidential nominee's acceptance speech will be on Thursday. We will now vote to ratify the slate of convention officers. Please use the Rules Committee portal on your browser to vote.
Am I unmuted or muted?
Thirty-second warning. This is your 30-second warning. Please be sure you have voted in the voting blocks on the committee's portal. This is a vote on convention. We're currently voting on the convention agenda. We have a final vote of 159 yeses, 0 noes, and 1 abstention. The vote is now closed on the convention agenda. You're on mute, Congressman.
What's that?
You were on mute. Go ahead.
Okay. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
All right, so the issue now is the adoption of the convention rules of procedure. And I am now going to recognize Elaine Kimmark to discuss it.
You're on mute, Elaine.
I'm pushing unmute.
There you
Okay,
go.
You're
great.
okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon y buenas tardes to everyone here. I'm honored to speak today and honored to rise virtually to ask this committee to adopt the convention rules. These rules reflect practicality and problem solving. Met with the worst public health crisis in a century, the Democratic Party has made the decision back in May to facilitate a remote convention. This convention will celebrate the ideals of this party. We are a party that respects science and that cares about the safety of everyone, especially those frontline workers who have been called to heroism over these past months. This convention will showcase our desire to build an economy that works for everyone and to make sure that we make another commitment to healthcare for all Americans, regardless of underlying conditions or the ability to pay. This convention will once again reaffirm our commitment to equality. And last but not least, this convention will restore the soul of our country and the health of American democracy from the threats posed by the most dangerous president in all of American history. This convention will demonstrate the strength of this party and the character and empathy of the candidate who will lead it, Joe Biden. And just think for a moment. Our party made this decision to go virtual early and is planning a convention that will be different but innovative, modern, and safe. The other party's convention is in chaos. This contrast about this small issue of the convention says all you need to know about the difference between Democrats and Republicans when it comes to governing this country. The proposed rules submitted for your approval will let us achieve these goals in the midst of an unprecedented crisis. Here's what they do. They establish a remote voting system that is workable and secure. Email ballots will be sent to all certified delegates on October 3rd to be returned by August 15th. For those who need it, mail or telephonic balloting will be available. The ballots will be individualized with serial numbers and tracking to prevent disruption. And the Secretary and the state parties are empowered to take steps to address possible issues. Let us remember that convention voting is public, always. We know who will be voting, and we will have the ability to confirm the substance of their vote. This is a system built to work, to ensure delegate participation with sound security practice. The rules also include a mechanism for approval of the vice presidential nominee by acclamation through a process meant to reflect what would happen in the convention hall itself. The nominee of one individual chosen by the presidential nominee and the conferring of that nomination on the individual as the only nominee. The 4 days in Milwaukee programming from the hall and remote sites throughout the country will showcase this party, our presidential candidate, and our vice presidential candidate, whoever she may be. I'm so happy to be able to say that. There, the vote tallies will be announced and our presidential and vice presidential nominations will be conferred. We will do this in a history-making way and in the midst of a crisis that we alone have stood up to. And so I'm very proud of this committee. I'm very proud of the National Committee in making this decision and setting up the convention to come. And I urge everyone to vote for the approval of the convention rules. Thank you.
Members of the committee should now vote on adoption of the rules of procedure for the convention.
I think we're at the 30-second warning for the vote.
You got the number? The vote is in. It's 167 yes, 0 no, and our abstainer has finally decided to join the majority. No abstentions. The rules are adopted, so we can move on.
Terrific. Thank you, Congressman. We're now going to begin our consideration of proposals submitted by rules members. Pursuant to our rules of procedure, the process to consider and debate these proposals provides that one of the co-chairs will recognize a member to offer their proposal. After the proposal is offered, we will recognize any additional speakers that have been pre-designated by the campaigns as provided in our committee's rules of procedure. After discussion, we will move to a vote. In some instances, a proposal may be withdrawn after discussion and before a vote. During this time, the speakers and time for debate on any proposal has been pre-designated by the campaigns. Congressman Frank and I will call on the speakers that have been pre-designated by the campaigns on each of the proposals. This process, as provided in our rules, will ensure our virtual meeting will run smoothly. So now we go to proposal number 1, the resolution to build on the reforms in the 2020 rules, the unity resolution. I will now recognize Yvette Lewis to offer proposal number 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Yvette Lewis, Chair of the Maryland Democratic Party, and I rise to present this unity resolution that has been agreed upon by Senator Bernie Sanders' campaign, Vice President Joe Biden's campaign, and the Democratic National Committee. After 2016, I served on the Unity and Reform Commission. The commission agreed to a set of dramatic, historic revisions aimed at restoring faith in the presidential nomination process and the management of the DNC. While not perfect, this nomination process ensures that it is accessible, transparent, and inclusive for all Democrats. This resolution calls upon the RBC to protect and to continue the work started in 2017 by the Unity and Reform Commission and to make improvements to the 2024 nominating process and the Democratic National Convention and build on the successes achieved this cycle. It also calls upon the RBC to conduct a comprehensive and structured review of the presidential nominating reforms adopted by the DNC for 2020. This review must empower rank and file Democrats and strengthen and unify the Democratic Party in the lead up to the general election. In conducting this review, the RBC should take steps to ensure public and stakeholder engagement in the process, including at least one public hearing and an opportunity to submit comments. Our party has come a long way since 2016. I have been a part of this journey from the beginning because in addition to hours working to get us to this place with one common goal of making our party better. And I could not feel more gratified today as I sit here and present this proposal. I ask that we take that same commitment moving forward. And I enthusiastically ask you to vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. We will now move to discussion on the motion. Members, you may begin voting on this proposal in the portal. Both the proposal and voting dashboard is in the rules portal. I call on Jeff Weaver to begin discussion. Mr. Weaver.
Thank you much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chairwoman Lewis, for offering this amendment with a group of us. It was great serving with you on that commission, and the product speaks for itself. As you pointed out, Chairwoman Lewis, this amendment does represent a continuation of an important process that began after the 2016 cycle. It was a process initiated by Senator Sanders and Secretary Clinton, both of whom showed great foresight in creating a reform process that led to the Unity Reform Commission. After a year of meetings and deliberations that led to recommendations to make our party more inclusive, more accessible, and more reflective of the rank and file of the party, that commission would not have been successful but for the hard work and good faith by all of the people on that commission. In particular, I would like to highlight the work of the chair of that commission, Jen O'Malley Dillon, and our vice chair, Larry Cohen, both who put in so many hours to make that possible, as well as all of the members of that commission. On a personal note, I would like to offer personal thanks to Charlie Baker and Jeff Berman, who spent far too many hours with me noodling over some of the incredible complex rules changes that we had to negotiate. That is also important to acknowledge the important role of our RBC co-chairs, Jim Roosevelt and Lorraine Miller, for creating a fair and inclusive process for consideration of these important rules changes. And of course, we all owe a debt of thanks and gratitude to our chairman, Tom Perez, who with great integrity and fairness worked so hard to see these changes were approved through the DNC. You know, this coming together around this amendment reminds us that often, you know, we are reminded about being gracious in defeat, but there is also an important value of being magnanimous in victory. And I think the work on this amendment, as well as the joint task forces that Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders put together, as well as the handling of the platform committee just a few days ago, and the ongoing communication that goes on between Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders really does reflect a magnanimous posture on the part of the Vice President. I think it is a hopeful sign for this party that there will be a place at the table for progressives. We will not always win, but we will be at the table in the discussion and have a fair shot to make our case and to make very positive changes such as those that were made through the Unity reform process. Finally, let me close by making an observation as someone who was active in the 2016 general election, as well as in this one. These changes that were made through the Unity Reform Commission, through the Rules and Bylaws Committee, and ultimately by the Democratic National Committee have made it much easier to unite this party at a time when our unity in defeating Trump and electing Joe Biden president is more important than ever. So I ask everyone to support these incredibly important reforms and to support this amendment.
Thank you, Jeff. I will now call on Neil Makija to continue discussion. Mr. Makija.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Neil Makija. I'm speaking to you from Philadelphia, birthplace of our democracy. Some of you may know me as Executive Director of Impact, which seeks to boost representation of the Indian American community, but I'm speaking to you as a supporter of Joe Biden, who appointed me to this committee. I, like Jeff, am in favor of the Unity resolution. Unfortunately, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee was scheduled to speak, but she has commitments related to the services of John Lewis, an American hero. The resolution reflects and praises the progress that the DNC has made in building a more inclusive and transparent nominating process, and it directs this committee to evaluate how those goals might be pursued through the 2024 process. We are proud of the 2020 process because it resulted in greater voter participation in the Democratic nominating process than ever before. We also saw a historic number of candidates and remarkable party unity when the process resulted in a clear winner. As a result, we're now well positioned to work together towards a victory in November in an election that genuinely is the most important in modern American history. The resolution praises the efforts of the DNC and the Unity Reform Commission in the wake of the 2016 election to make the process more accessible, transparent, and inclusive, It also establishes a framework that can be evaluated and built upon. So the resolution recognizes that our work as a party is not done. As the party of diversity and democracy, we need to continually be open to new voters and new voices. And this is the work that we do as Impact with the Indian American community, but it's also something we need to do with every community and underrepresented group that feels left out of the process. We must ensure that the future of our party represents the future of the country. So this resolution asks the Rules and Bylaws Committee to conduct a review of the reforms that were adopted for 2020 to determine what further changes could be considered to the primary process, and if so, to publicly propose and discuss those changes. These are matters that are important to our party, but they should not distract us between now and November. Until then, our focus is singular. The election of Joe Biden as President of the United States is that goal. So questions about the next process will begin in 2021, according to this resolution. And for those reasons, I support it.
Thank you, Mr. Makiha. I will now call on Larry Cohen for further discussion. Mr. Cohen?
Thank you, co-chair, and my pleasure to follow my fellow Unity Reform Commission members, Jeff Weaver, Yvette Lewis. A shout out to the chair. I was the co-chair of that commission, Jen O'Malley Dillon, the critical work she's doing to elect Joe Biden. This is called the Unity Resolution, and it truly has been an effort to unify us all, everyone involved in this, building this party. And that's another way to think of it. It's about party building. And we build the party from the precinct to the county to the state level. I just want to read a brief statement on behalf of 39 chairs, state party chairs, who worked with me on this resolution and earlier drafts. And particularly a shout out to co-authors of this work, ASDC Chair and Minnesota DFL Chair Ken Martin, Washington State Chair Tina Podladowski, Nebraska Chair Jane Klebb, and South Carolina Chair Trav Robertson. This is the statement then signed by, and I'll read off the states at the end, many state chairs who worked with us to preserve, as we just heard, this reform tradition, this notion to build on inclusion, and that every voter counts, and that our job is to bring unaffiliated voters into the party. We believe that the countless hours of work done by the Unity and Reform Commission following the 2016 presidential election were essential to the historically diverse 2020 presidential primary field. And we firmly believe that those reforms must continue into the 2024 presidential nomination process to retain the enthusiasm generated by the 2020 primaries. With our very democracy under daily assault from the Trump administration, we have an obligation to the country to continue providing a democratic presidential nomination process that is open and transparent while reducing barriers to participation by historically marginalized constituencies in our party. Many states have used the guidance from the Unity Reform Commission to switch to a primary to apportion delegates. As a result, we saw voter participation in our nomination process skyrocket. We believe that with further study and input from those constituencies, we can build upon those reforms to create an even more accessible presidential nomination process in 2024. Accordingly, we urge you to vote in favor of this resolution to continue the work that has been so critical in crafting a process that has yielded a more unified party heading into the general election than we've seen in years. The Unity Reform Commission has been an invaluable tool for building consensus among our big tent party, and those efforts should remain and persist as a forum to ensure every voice in our party is heard. Signed by the chairs as follows: in the East, Vermont, District of Columbia, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maine, New Hampshire, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands. In the Midwest, Kansas, North Dakota, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, Minnesota DFL, Nebraska, South Dakota, Ohio, Indiana, Iowa. In the South, Arkansas, Democrats abroad, they're in all regions. Kentucky, Mississippi, South Carolina, West Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama. In the West, Wyoming, Idaho, New Mexico, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Northern Mariana Islands, and Montana. So in that spirit of unity, in that spirit of a continuing commitment to change, in that spirit of democracy inside our party, not just outside our party, I'm proud to support this resolution. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cohen. Thank you, Rules and Bylaws Committee members, for your remarks on this proposal. We have concluded our discussion on this proposal, and we're going to now move to a vote. Please vote using the Rules Committee portal in your browser and select a voting option yes, no, or abstain. We will indicate when we are at the 30-second warning for voting to close. If you haven't voted, Rules members, please cast your vote. Thirty-second warning starting now. If you haven't voted, please do so. We have a final vote total of 173 yeses, 0 noes, and 0 abstentions. The vote is now closed on proposal number 1.
The next item is the charter amendment on automatic delegates. And I recognize Maggie Wenderly.
Thank you. I'm Maggie Wonderly from the state of Illinois. And first of all, I would like to applaud the Rules Committee on adopting the Unity Resolution. I am proposing that we amend Article 2, Section 4 of the Charter in subsection H to read, notwithstanding any provision to the contrary in this section, provide for all of the following to serve as automatic delegates, who shall have full rights of participation with the exception that they will not cast a vote for president on the first ballot at the National Convention, unless a candidate already has obtained enough pledged delegates to equal a majority of all pledged delegates and automatic delegates at the convention. This essentially removes references to unpledged delegates and replaces with the automatic delegate designation we have been using. This would make the current rules about superdelegates permanent going forward. I was on the Rules Committee in 2016 when they voted to form the Unity Reform Commission, and I followed it through to the 2018 DNC meeting in Chicago, where the DNC members voted overwhelmingly that unpledged delegates should not vote on the first ballot at convention unless the nominee had already won enough primary votes that he or she would win the nomination outright without their influence. That way, unpledged delegates would serve their original purpose, which was to help decide a consensus candidate in the event that a nominee was not decided on the first ballot. In 2016, it had been very discouraging when I saw states where one candidate had overwhelmingly won the primary, but due to considerable influence of the superdelegates, the other candidate had won the state. Each individual superdelegate had the same voting power as thousands of primary voters in their state, so their vote could easily skew an election to favor one candidate over the other. This year, however, the primary voters chose their nominee on their own, as it should be. We had a truly democratic process. There could be no doubt who the majority of the voters supported. This change we implemented was not only good for democracy, it was good for the party. I propose we send a message to the voters that we trust them to pick our presidential candidate by making this change permanent now. In turn, we will earn their trust that going forward, we promise that their votes will decide our nominee, and only in the case that they do not coalesce around one candidate as they did this year, will their party leaders weigh in to help decide our presidential candidate. I humbly ask you to vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
The next speaker on this proposition is Brent Welder.
Hello, thank you. I also am so happy that of the accomplishments of the Unity Commission. I want to thank those members for passing such important rules in the 2020 presidential election. But I do want to address the elephant in the room here. And frankly, I think it sounds much more like an elephant than a donkey. And that is that superdelegates being allowed to change the will of American Democratic voters in the 50 states across this country is completely undemocratic, and it needs to end. Now, of course, superdelegates, which is party leaders, elected officials, should not be barred from participating in the national convention. They should be able to have input on the different rules and the platform and a number of things. But they should not have the ability to override the wishes of the votes of the Democratic voters in the 50 states. This is not a crazy idea. In fact, the crazy idea is allowing a small number of people in our democracy, in our country, to override the will and the votes of millions of people. It doesn't make any sense. And even the Republican Party does not allow it in their nomination process. If superdelegates are ever in the future in any election seen as overriding the will of the Democratic voters in any presidential election, I think everyone here knows that it will bitterly tear the party in half in a way that it honestly may never recover. Superdelegates need to end once and for all, and for the integrity of our party, for our elections, and anything that takes any step to make this process better, I support, and I hope that you'll vote yes on this amendment.
The next speaker is Rita Jo Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I come to you today to speak from Washington, soon to be the 51st State District of Columbia. All of you should have the proposed charter amendment documents in front of you. I am Rita Jo Lewis, a supporter of Vice President Joe Biden, who appointed me to this committee. I oppose the proposed charter amendment for a simple reason. The Unity Resolution offered and adopted moments ago properly praises the DNC for the reforms in its nominating process that were adopted in advance of the 2020 presidential cycle. Those reforms should be studied and built upon to further an inclusive, accessible, and confidence-inspiring nominating process. That is the purpose of the Unity Resolution that preceded this issue. And the nominating process, I believe, as we all do, as many of us do, should be considered as a whole, considered as to what works, what doesn't work, and what options are there to make the process stronger. The issue of automatic delegates should not be singled out and made the subject of a charter amendment, nor should the work of the 2020 convention be sidetracked by diving into the charter of the Democratic Party. For these reasons, as a Biden appointee to the committee, I oppose the proposed charter amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegates should now vote on this proposal.
It says we may leave the business open on the votes, and we'll let you know when they give 30-second warning. I keep trying to show you, but you don't want to see it.
I thought you yeah, and then- gotta make sure they get the votes together. And I'm not quite- We're at 30 seconds. They say,
Did you already give a 30-second warning?
what's that?
Did you already give the 30-second warning?
The vote is 29 in favor, 141 against, 3 abstentions. The proposition is defeated. The next issue is the charter amendment on primaries. And I recognize Shanna East. Who apparently doesn't recognize me.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shauna East. I am proud to serve with you all here today. Our democracy is under attack. As we prepare to hold an election in the middle of a pandemic, Democrats must take a stand against voter suppression and in favor of the precious right to vote. That is why I'm proposing to increase voter participation by requiring government or party-run primaries with provisions for voting by mail. This past February, I gained firsthand knowledge as to the shortcomings of the caucus system while serving as a precinct captain in Iowa, and I believe this change is essential for 3 key reasons. First, we must make our presidential selection process more accessible. Our charter assures all Democratic voters full, timely, and equal opportunity to participate and allows participation in good faith by all voters who are Democrats. Caucuses simply cannot fulfill this promise. Caucus rules create unique barriers to participation by requiring in-person attendance during a narrow window of time. Unsurprisingly, in 4 states which abandoned caucuses for primaries this year, voter participation increased 2 to 6-fold. If we care about expanding Democratic voter participation, why would we not require this change in all 50 states? Our delegate selection rules state that we will ensure accessibility in accordance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. While DNC rules state caucuses must be accessible, they imposed undue burdens on the disabled in practice. People with disabilities are up to 21% less likely to vote, and this participation gap is even worse in caucuses. The COVID-19 pandemic should also remind us of the need for an electoral model that allows for expanded mail-in participation. Caucuses will not do. Second, we must ensure that our presidential selection process allows for accurate and consistent reporting of results. On this front, caucuses pose a host of problems. Consider Iowa's rapid shift to a new reporting app. Out of 1,765 precincts, only 439 successfully submitted their results through the app. That's less than 25%. Many precinct captains were not able to report at all on caucus night, and it took over 2 weeks to finalize results. Errors like this are one reason why DNC Chair Tom Perez called the 2020 Iowa caucuses a, quote, major league failure. None of these problems would have happened if Iowa used a primary election to register voter preferences. It's time for a change. Lastly, problems with caucuses have undermined public confidence in the party and our presidential selection process. Here are just some of the national headlines surrounding the 2020 Iowa caucuses. Iowa caucus results riddled with errors and inconsistencies. How the Iowa caucuses became an epic fiasco for Democrats. How the Iowa caucuses fell apart and tarnished the vote. As Professor Kathleen Hall Jamieson of the University of Pennsylvania put it, the caucus fiasco called into question the integrity of voting and voter trust in the process. This is an outcome that could have been avoided with primary elections, which are far more routine, more accessible, and less error-prone. The right to participate in elections should be open to all people, and our elections should employ fair, transparent, and accountable procedures. There are no doubt many other changes that need to be made to strengthen voting rights and counteract racist Republican ballot box discrimination. But that does not negate the reality that when compared to caucuses, government or party-run primary elections expand voter participation. We should use these processes for presidential selection across all 50 states. I strongly urge you to vote yes on my amendment today. Thank you very much.
We will next hear from Kip Wainscott.
Thank you, co-chairs. My name is Kip Wainscott, and I speak to you as a proud supporter of Joe Biden and as a Biden appointee to this committee, and also with the utmost reverence for voting rights and democratic participation. And just to ensure that there's no confusion, I entirely support easy and accessible elections. I support vote by mail. I support broad participation in the democratic nominating process. These are really important principles. They're good principles, and they're supported by the Biden campaign as well. But though these may be the goals of this charter amendment, they are unfortunately not, in fact, what it would achieve. This proposal would require state parties to adopt party-run primaries if their state governments didn't offer broad vote-by-mail options. And these would be intensive and expensive undertakings. They would not benefit from government elections infrastructure, and they may not be consistent with longstanding and successful approaches of particular state parties. And as a party, we should consider all available options to ensure that eligible voters can participate in our elections easily, safely, and effectively. And vote by mail is one way. It's a very good way. But unfortunately, our party lacks the power to establish a vote by mail process in every state. And where Republican leadership in a state stands in the way, this amendment would require a party run process. And so too, when a state statutory provision might stand in the way. That's just not an approach our charter should mandate. And for these reasons, and as a Biden appointee on the committee, I'm voting no. Thank you.
We are ready to vote. Delegates to the committee should now start voting. No, it's not 30 seconds. Okay, I'm watching. playing games. Thirty seconds remain in the vote. The vote is 15 in favor, 148 against, 9 abstentions. The proposal is not adopted. The next proposal is the statement on retaining pledged delegates earned. And the first speaker is Maggie Wonderly.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In a recognition of the agreement between Vice President Biden and Senator Sanders regarding the allocation of statewide delegates, the at-large and PLEO delegates, and standing committee members following the suspension of Senator Sanders' campaign, I propose that this approach be recommended for adoption by the DNC's Rules and Bylaws Committee. Specifically, a candidate who has earned statewide delegates and standing committee members should retain them upon the suspension of their campaign unless that candidate chooses to release them. Should that candidate continue to appear on primary ballots, they should be entitled to the statewide delegates and standing committee members that they earn. There are several reasons that this would be a good idea for the party going forward. First, the Democratic Party is a diverse party, and the Democratic National Convention and the party platform should represent the diverse views of its members. The Democratic National Convention is the highest authority of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party prioritizes full participation of its members as laid out in the charter. Second, the Democratic National Convention should strive to unite delegates of all candidates behind the Democratic nominee for president. The choices of the Democratic primary voters in each state should be reflected proportionally in their delegations so that all Democratic voters have representation at the National Convention. Third, the purpose of the Democratic National Convention is not only to support the nominee, but also to produce the party platform every 4 years and get input on party rules from standing committee members elected to represent Democratic voters in each state and territory. Not only is this the right thing to do, but it can be beneficial to the presidential nominee. Presidential candidates who are ensured their voters will still have a voice in the party platform and rules will be more likely to suspend their campaign earlier to rally around the nominee if they do not need to be concerned about their voters losing representation at the DNC. Finally, and perhaps most important, Democratic voters who feel their voices are represented in the party will rally around the presidential nominee and actively work to promote and advance the interests of the party. Therefore, I urge you to vote yes on this resolution. Thank you.
The next speaker is Jackie Norris.
Hi, everybody. Let's see. My name is Jackie Norris, and I am from the great state of Iowa. I am a proud supporter of Vice President Biden, who appointed me to this committee. I am speaking in support of the statement of the committee on retaining delegates earned. One of the defining characteristics over the spring and summer of 2020 has been unity, achieved by the close cooperation and open and sometimes tough dialogue between the Biden and Sanders campaigns. Our joint approach to the issue of statewide delegates and standing committee members has reflected that cooperation. Under the existing rules, a candidate who drops out loses statewide delegates pledged to them and standing committee slots allocated to them. Under the Biden-Sanders agreement, the delegates and committee slots earned by Senator Sanders were filled by his supporters. This makes sense. A candidate who suspends their campaign should have the discretion to release their delegates or not. And it worked well throughout the spring primaries. We support its adoption in the future. For these reasons, as a Biden appointee to this committee, I respectfully ask you to vote yes.
The members of the committee shall now vote. Thirty seconds remaining. How we doing? The proposal is adopted, 171 yeas, 0 nays, 0 abstentions.
We're now to proposal number 5, which is the proposed statement on financial support for territorial party entities. I will now recognize Stephen Woodruff to offer remarks on proposal number 5, or to offer proposal number 5, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm Stephen Woodruff from the Northern Mariana Islands. I am very pleased and honored to be in this room with so many titans of the Democratic Party. The Northern Marianas are the most recent addition to the National Party. 2016 was our first convention. And even though our first governor 42 years ago was a Democrat, it's been a real struggle for the Democratic Party through the years. And in fact, we haven't, for more than a decade, we haven't ever had a full slate of candidates in an election until this year, because this year, through grit and hard work, we will have a full slate in November. A big struggle for us has been financial support for the party. We have no paid staff in our party organization, the Northern Marianas. With this proposal, which is intended to help the challenges that we and in other jurisdictions face, I want to thank the Sanders and Biden's campaign for helping me to finalize this language. Here's a proposal I will, which is the Rules Committee urges the Democratic National Committee to allow American Samoa, Democrats abroad, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, and the Virgin Islands Democratic parties to participate equally in programs of national party financial support, such as the state party partnership, and to the extent necessary, study and support potential legislation and policy to assure equal participation at the earliest possible date. I thank you for being able to consider this, and I ask every member of the committee to support this proposal. And Sisu Sumase from the Northern Mariana Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Woodruff. We're now going to move to discussion on this motion. Members, though, you may begin voting on this proposal in your portal. Both the proposal and voting dashboard is in the rules portal, just a reminder. I'm going to now call on Mr. Joe Smallhoover to begin discussion. Mr. Smallhoover.
Thank you very much. Some of you will be surprised to find out that Democrats abroad is a territory. At least you are in the case of the DNC. There are 9 million Americans who live outside the country, and we don't have a territory. You vote in our home states. But we have the same challenges that the Northern Marianas and the other territories actually have, which is raising funds here is quite difficult. And the DNC has significant problems with respect to federal law, being able to help us do what we need to do, which is turn out the vote in all of those districts. I was the chair of Democrats Abroad, a multi-term member of the DNC, and I know how hard this is for the DNC to deal with. We really want to make sure that all of those non-million people get to vote. And therefore, as a former chair of Democrats Abroad, as a member-elect of the DNC, and as a proud Biden appointee to this committee, I urge you to support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smallhoover. We will be advising you at the 30-second warning. Thirty-second warning. Members, if you have not voted, please do so now on the Rules Committee portal in your browser. Yes, no, or abstain. We have a final vote tally, 171 yeses, 1 no, 0 abstentions. The proposal is adopted.
We are now moving to proposal number 6, a charter amendment, and I recognize Brent Welder.
Hello and thank you. This is a proposal to provide for ranked choice voting at the convention in votes for president and vice president, as well as at DNC meetings. You know, over the past few years, Democrats and Americans from across the country have been seeing the virtues of ranked choice voting. So an idea that not long ago was really mysterious to a lot of people, but now is picking up a lot of steam as a way to most accurately express the wills of the people and of the voters. When the voters vote by ranked choice voting, as I'm sure you know, they simply rank each candidate in an election by a number to express which candidate they support. And it gives the voters the most accurate ability to express their wishes in our democracy. Now, this amendment that I'm proposing, which is an idea by a great progressive thinker, Winston Apple, would make our votes for president, vice president, and party officers done by ranked choice voting. The essence of democracy is majority rule. Fortunately, the charters and bylaws of the DNC require that our officers are elected by a majority vote rather than a plurality. And in the internal elections, the primary added benefit of ranked choice voting would be to identify the candidate in a large field who has the broadest and deepest support among the members. Well, here in my home state of Kansas, the state primary was even conducted by ranked choice voting, and it was an overwhelming success. Democratic voters across the state felt more empowered than ever by having the ability to accurately express their preference for President of the United States. And if we can do it in Kansas, I think Democrats can do it everywhere. And I think the DNC is a great place to start. There are three main reasons why ranked choice voting should be utilized to cast votes at the DNC and when DNC committee members are elected party leaders. One, it most accurately expresses the will of the delegates and the DNC members who are voting. Second, it eliminates the opportunity for backroom horse trading and deals between rounds of voting that can lead to corruption. And third, it's simply a much more efficient and effective way to make sure that all of the DNC members can cast a vote for the party leaders. As we all know, ranked choice voting is not a radical idea for anyone who believes in democracy. It is simply a more effective and efficient means of conducting elections when there's more than two candidates. Any of you that were involved in the DNC members officer election in 2017 remembers that we had 9 great candidates for party chair, and that nearly and for all the other offices, we had a ton of great candidates as well. And the DNC meeting at which the officers were elected was scheduled to end at 1:30 p.m., but it went to 10 p.m. as round after round of balloting was needed to elect officers. DNC members had to leave early, catch a flight, it created all kinds of problems. And with ranked choice voting, we could have determined the winners for all the officer positions with one single ballot. So I just think it makes a ton of sense. I urge you to vote yes on this amendment because it is a great way for us as the Democratic Party to display for the nation that we stand for empowering voters, and I think this is a great way to do just that.
The next speaker is George Reedy.
This is George Reedy from Mississippi, Mr. Chairman. Some of you old heads may recognize that name.
I apologize. My husband pronounces the same spelling, Reedy, so you'll forgive me for that.
I will. You, Mr. Chairman, you forgot you knew my father in Mississippi, Bill Reedy, the great native civil rights lawyer that did all the legal work for Aaron Henry and the Freedom Democratic Party. It's good to see you again. I'm speaking as a supporter of Joe Biden and as a Biden appointee to this committee. I oppose the charter changes under discussion. During this cycle, for the first time, certain state parties adopted ranked choice voting for their primaries and caucuses. That approach was approved through the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee, and further use of the process may be explored in the coming cycle. It would be a considerable jump from the initial testing of the waters to a convention governed by ranked choice voting, with the election of DNC officers likewise governed by the same approach. In addition, the proponents of ranked choice voting point to the approach as a solution for plurality election winners who win office even though they do not have majority support. It fixes a circumstance, for example, where Paul LePage became governor of Maine twice with less than 40% of the vote. However, it is not possible to garner the Democratic nomination or to be elected as an officer at the DNC with the plurality of the convention. A majority vote is required. If not, there are successive ballots until a majority is achieved. Ranked choice voting in this context is a fix for a problem we do not have. For these reasons, I stand as a Biden appointee to this committee and urge you to vote no on this proposal.
The voting will now begin on this proposition. 30 seconds. The vote is 13 in favor, 154 against, 4 abstentions. The proposal is defeated.
We now move to proposal number 7, the proposed charter amendment to reject PAC money and banning corporate lobbyists from serving on the DNC. I will now recognize Brent Welder to offer proposal number 7.
Hello and thank you. Again, my name is Brent Welder. I'm from Kansas. In 2018, I ran for United States Congress, and I actually created the No Corporate PAC Money Pledge, and I was the first candidate in the country to take this pledge. As I'm sure you know, since that time, hundreds of members of Congress, presidential candidates, other candidates for office at all levels of government have taken this pledge and in this stand, and it has excited Democrats and Americans alike across the country because they really feel like they're electing leaders that support them and not just the corporate interests. In 2017, the DNC members then took a strong stand against corporate PAC money by voting on a resolution to ban corporate PAC donations to the DNC, which is fantastic. The amendment today that I'm proposing puts this language into the DNC charter and also bans corporate lobbyists from serving on the DNC. Now, the corrupting influence of big money in politics is the biggest factor stopping progress on issues that affect the poor, minorities, women, workers, and so many others that we as Democrats work to defend from the greedy corporate interests of far too many multinational corporations that all too often care about only one thing, and that's the almighty dollar. Too many giant corporations will do almost anything, even if it harms people, as long as it makes their profits tick up by even 0.1% at the end of their financial quarter. This is undeniable. Our platform says we are committed to doing everything we can to build a full employment economy where everyone has a job that pays enough to raise a family and live in dignity with a sense of purpose. However, you know, there's a proposed law on this that has no co-sponsors. Why? Corporate interests do not want a federal job guarantee. It would drive up wages and reduce profits. Union rights are being trampled. I'm a union side labor lawyer. And women earn less money at work than men doing the exact same job. Why? Because giant corporations lobby against the laws that we can and should pass to fix that. Our platform says Americans should be able to access public coverage through a public option. The Choice Act, a public option for health insurance, has been introduced in the House of Representatives. It has 20 co-sponsors. Medicare for All is co-sponsored by 1/3 of the Democrats in the Senate and about half the Democrats in the House. Our platform also says that Democrats have been fighting to secure universal health care for the American people for generations. We have not been able to win that fight because of private, for-profit health insurance companies who oppose a public option. Our platform says Democrats believe in climate change and that believe that climate change poses a real and urgent threat to our economy, our national security, and our children's health and futures, and that Americans deserve the jobs and security that come from becoming the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. We are not even close to passing a Green New Deal. And why is that? Because corporations that make up the fossil fuel industry are willing to doom our children and grandchildren to a catastrophic future rather than see the possibility of their profits shrinking at all. We need to neutralize corporate influence, first within our party, that is preventing us from living up to our platform, our ideals, and being a true party of the people. The party of the people cannot put profits ahead of people and remain the party of the people. People are taking to the streets in this country because they do not believe that they have a voice in our democracy. The DNC has already banned corporate PAC money by rule, and this amendment makes that permanent. We stand for healthcare for all, common sense gun reform, and clean air and water that also battles catastrophic climate change. And we stand for these things even if it takes us speaking truth to corporate power and rejecting the money and the lobbyists from our platform and rulemaking process. And for those reasons, I strongly urge you to vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welder. We're going to now move to discussion on this motion. Members, as a reminder, you can start to begin voting on this proposal through the portal. Now I'm going to call on Mike Kreloff to begin discussion. Mr. Kreloff? You're on mute. There you go.
Hello. Yes, sorry.
No worries.
I'll get there someday. I come at this with some experience in that I've been a lobbyist for many, many do-gooder groups over my career, and occasionally a lobbyist for for-profit corporations also. I've also been involved with DNC rules ever since 1968, when my role was to run faster than the Chicago police. And then 1969, when I testified before the DNC's McGovern-Hughes Commission, which changed the rules in substantial ways to modernize the Democratic Party. My point in raising all of that is to say, I don't think this is the place to be getting into these kinds of detailed work when we have a DNC commission that has been working for 18 months and will be coming back with recommendations on these kinds of issues. The issue here is not really whether we should be making a blanket rejection of certain campaign monies or restricting the eligibility rights of DNC membership. The states and the candidates, I think, do a pretty good job of making decisions there. But if that is the will of the party, let it be determined by a normal, thorough study and examination by the party. The convention week, or here the convention month, is really the time to pull together to make sure that we have the best unified effort going forward to elect our next president. And these kinds of proposals, I think, are best deferred for that study by a commission, which will happen. So for that reason, I do not support this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Kreloff. I'm now going to call on Jerry Goldfeder for additional remarks.
Thank you very much. I was muted. I'm from New York, and it's a pleasure to see so many friends from around the country and be part of this process. I've been at conventions like Mike since 1968. And I agree with a lot of what he says. I was appointed to the Rules Committee by Joe Biden, who I strongly support. Obviously, the campaign finance and campaign finance reform issues are extremely important. I've been privileged to be an election lawyer and a campaign finance lawyer for more years than I care to remember. And this is critical in terms of how we proceed as a party. And we're not shy as a party. We have a progressive platform and a presidential candidate who's committed to a broad and progressive agenda. And I should add, a candidate who doesn't accept contributions from corporate PACs. And over the coming months, if a contributor gives to our party, that contributor is signing on to our agenda, not influencing it. But this committee at this time is not the place to litigate these issues. Our mission is very clear. We need to have a successful convention, an inclusive nominating process moving forward, and most importantly, the election of Joe Biden. I move to table this resolution.
There has been a motion to table this proposal. Is there a second?
There is.
A motion to table has been moved and seconded. We're going to now move to a vote on the motion to table this proposal. Repeat, this is a vote on the motion to table this proposal. Please vote using the Rules Committee portal in your browser and select a voting option. Yes, no, or abstain on a motion to table this proposal. A yes vote would support laying the proposal on the table. We will give you a 30-second warning.
I have a point of order or clarification here. Tabling until when?
I'll respond under the rules of parliamentary procedure generally until someone makes a successful motion to take it off the table. With the expiration of the committee, that wouldn't be possible. I mean, after the committee expires, if no one has moved to take it off the table successfully, then it dies with the committee.
Gotcha. Wow, that doesn't make any sense at all, it seems, but I guess people should vote however their conscience tells them.
That's my...
Well, no, I mean, I'm not saying you didn't accurately say that. It just seems to me that that's an absurd thing to do to table this. We might as well vote yes or no on it.
Thirty-second warning. Members, if you haven't voted, please do so. We're going to give another 30 seconds for members to be able to vote. We're having some tech delays. Want to make sure everybody gets a chance to vote. We have a final 122 yeses, 46 noes, 3 abstain. The vote is closed. The motion passed and this proposal has been tabled.
The last proposal that was submitted in a timely fashion is a statement on DNC and Standing Committee diversity, and I recognize Judith Whitmer.
Thank you, Chairman Frank. And hello from Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Nevada State Democratic Party. I'm Judith Whitmer. Proposal number 8 is the statement of the committee to build on the diversity with DNC membership and standing committees. This proposal is a mechanism to implement the agreements and initiatives reached by the Unity Task Force. It builds upon the Democratic Party commitment to diversity, inclusiveness, and full participation by bringing state central committees into the process of appointing members to the DNC standing committees. In the spirit of unity and commitment to values and principles of democracy, I urge my fellow Rules Committee members to vote yes on this proposal. Thank you.
The next speaker is a former speaker and an old friend, Christine Quinn.
Thank you, Barney. It's great to see you. And it's wonderful to see you sitting in front of the picture that you're sitting in front of, as you said, reminding us all that is possible. And thank you, Chair Cardona, for your good work on this committee and all of your good work. And I am very excited to be speaking to you as a supporter of Joe Biden and a Joe Biden appointee to this committee. And I'm particularly excited to be talking about a statement that speaks to diversity, because much as Chair Frank, I've committed much of my life to the issues around diversity. So to get to speak to it, to me, is a personal honor. Now, we all know as good Democrats that the strength of our country lies in our diversity. We also know that it's our party that understands that fundamental truth. So to have this statement as part of what our Rules Committee is doing is really in line with everything our party believes in. And I'm glad that we're elevating it today. I just want to say that the statement asks that the DNC, when making at-large appointees to the National Committee or to standing committees, respect and reflect our diversity. It articulates diversity of background, thought, geography. Now, we all know this is going to make us a better party. When we hear more points of view, differing points of view, we come up with better positions and better statements. And again, as an appointee of Joe Biden to this committee, I thank Judith for her work on the resolution and urge everyone to vote yes.
I appreciate the former Speaker of the City Council of New York refraining from putting the vote herself as she used to do. So I'll do that. The vote on this statement now is open. I thought that was me. 30 seconds. $122 yes. Oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Should have had Christine do it. 156 yes, 0 no, and 2 abstentions. So the proposal is approved.
Amigos, we have taken action on all of the business before us today. Yay, give yourselves a round of applause. I am now going to entertain a motion to approve the report of this committee, excuse me, and authorize staff to make corrections as needed. The report of this committee is considered final, except for the approved resolution that will be distributed to delegates for their approval. Please turn on your video and unmute your microphone at this time.
This one's my voice.
Is there a motion to approve the report of this committee?
I so motion.
I second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Excellent. We will move to a vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion has passed.
Yay. Woo.
Woo-hoo.
It is now time for our closing statements. I want to express my appreciation to the Democratic National Committee. Like a lot of things, this was a lot harder than it looked. We really pioneered here, having a national political convention in the age of the pandemic, having to do it electronically and virtually. And I think we did a very good job of approximating the procedures that would have happened had we been able to do this in person. We have also furthered the process, and I'm a former political science student. I believe we have furthered the process of having, particularly on the Democratic side, the most openly participatory, small d democratic process for choosing a national head of government anywhere in the world. This, I understand people like to complain about being excluded, etc. But particularly with the movements that have been taken to replace caucuses with primaries and with further things that were done today, the degree of participation and the selection of the Democratic nominee for the President of the United States literally is better than almost anywhere in the world. No one is better in terms of full participation. I also want to express my appreciation to the people of various shades of ideology. We ought to be clear, though. We are talking about differences within a liberal progressive movement. The differences within our party are minimized by far by the differences between us and the opposition, especially under the virulent bigotry and incompetence of Donald Trump. And I am very appreciative of the willingness of people, and it's not the easiest thing to do, to accept the greater good as the goal to which we will work, to fight hard for particular viewpoints, but then come together as we are doing. And the purpose of the Rules Committee is not to get in the way. And I'm very proud, this is my second time as co-chair, that over the past two conventions, we have significantly moved in the direction of greater democratization without a degree of divisiveness. I think we have a very functional procedure ahead of us, and I look forward to celebrating the results of this and so many other things that people have done together in about 3 months.
Thank you, Congressman Frank. I want to go back and I apologize for not having done this at the very beginning. It was absolutely my intention to do so. We got wrapped up in our opening remarks, and in the meeting we had mentioned Congressman Lewis, but I think he deserves a little bit more than a mention. I would love to do a moment of silence for this legendary, iconic individual who has given of so much of himself to our democracy, to our freedom, to the ideals of the Democratic Party, and to the ideals and values of what this country needs to stand for. So let's call for a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you all. I also want to thank the DNC staff. I think that these are individuals that are incredibly committed to our party, to the work that we all do. Having done 2 tours of duty at the DNC, I understand how hard they work, how committed they are, and frankly, many times how thankless their jobs are. So I would like to give them a round of applause as we move forward with this incredibly challenging moment in time where we're trying to do all of this virtually, and it is new for everybody, and we are all under an extra layer of both scrutiny as well as stress. So I want to give a round of applause to the DNC staff. Thank you all. So I hope, hermanos and hermanas, that you all are incredibly proud of the work that we have accomplished together, that we have accomplished here today. It has been a long road to get to where we are at a moment of such uncertainty in the country. I think people are looking to us. People are looking to Democrats. People are going to be looking to Joe Biden and his team. People are also looking at the ideals and the values that we represent as a party in order to take our country back from where it is today. The issue is that we stand at a moment of crossroads, and we need to understand that what we're going to be doing in November is it's a decision that to me, and I think to so many Democrats and Americans across the country, is as existential and could not be more serious. So I want to thank all of the Rules members, again, the staff who've been working so diligently on this meeting to make sure that this would be smooth and seamless. The strength of our party is in its diversity. There is more that unites us than divides us. We all understand how vital this year's election is to our nation, as we all have been talking about today. Excuse me for just a moment. We are going to put back into motion proposal number 7. We're going to be putting it back on the table. We need to vote on the motion to put this back on the table. We have a motion to put the proposal number 7 back on the table. So let's go to the portal and we're going to be voting on on proposal number 7. And the vote at hand is to put proposal number 7 back on the table. The vote is going to be up on the portal. If you see in the portal, the vote is to put proposal number 7 back on the table. The vote is live now. Again, we are currently in the middle of a vote to put proposal number 7 back on the table. Thirty-second warning. The final vote to put it back on the table is 138 for yes, 18 for no, and 1 abstention. Now we're going to vote on the underlying amendment, proposal number 7. We're calling for a vote on the underlying amendment itself that we had discussed in proposal number 7.
Can I, just because I was asked about this before, explain very technically, that was a motion to take it off the table, i.e. to untable it. So the vote now takes place as if there had been no motion to table and you are back on the merits of the proposal, yes or no.
Thank you for that clarification, Congressman Frank. We are voting now directly on the amendment. Yes, no, or abstain. I will give you all a 30-second warning. 30-second warning, 30 more seconds to vote. We have a final 44 yeses, 98 noes, 6 abstentions, and the proposal does not pass. We will now move to adjournment. Again, everyone, thank you so much for what you have done here today, for the hard work it took to get here, for the additional hard work that we will all have to do between now and the convention, and then from the convention to the election. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for your values, for your ideals, and for working hard for what we represent each and every single day. Muchas gracias, hermanos. Do I need to call for another motion for the meeting to be adjourned?
Well, if we all just disappear, they'll get the point.
Meeting is adjourned then. Muchas gracias. Have a great evening, everyone.
Thank you.